Let's talk about a name you might not know, but absolutely should. Bhau Sathe. He was known as the People's Bard, or Lok Shahir, a folk storyteller who used his art, his words, to fight for real social change. His life was just one of profound struggle, but his impact, well, that was even more profound.
And that brings us to this one, central, kind of mind-bending question that frames this whole story. How on earth does a man born into the lowest rung of the caste system, a man who literally spent a single day in a classroom, end up with a statue in Moscow? To answer that, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
You see, Bhau Sathe's story starts in a world of pretty extreme adversity. It was a life forged in the hardships of a small village in Maharashtra and then hammered into shape on the unforgiving streets of Mumbai.
He was born in 1920 into what was then called an untouchable caste. He wanted an education, he really did, but that dream was just crushed. At 14 years old, he went to school for 1 day, just one, and the sting of caste-based humiliation was so bad that he was forced to drop out. Forever. Soon after that, he made his way to Mumbai, hoping for a better life.
But Mumbai wasn't some easy escape. Nope. Survival meant taking any job he could get his hands on. He was a boot polisher, a mill worker, a railway porter, a coal carrier. Just a series of absolutely back-breaking low-wage jobs. And it was this world, this daily fight, this first-hand experience of exploitation that would end up being the raw material for his entire life's work.
So the big question is, how do you go from that, from a life of manual labor, to becoming a literary giant? Well, the answer is in his relentless drive to teach himself, and his discovery of some really powerful world-changing ideas. His entire worldview was really shaped by this incredible trinity of influences. You had social reformers like Mahatma Phule and the legendary Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who taught him the language of social justice and fighting the caste system. And then, from thinkers like Karl Marx and the writer Maxim Gorky, he got this critical lens of class struggle. And here's what was so unique. He brilliantly wove these ideas together, arguing that in India, caste and class weren't separate issues. They were two sides of the very same coin of oppression.
So he started to write, and wow, did he write. Despite having basically zero formal education, he wrote an incredible 35 novels. Every single one of them held up a mirror to the lives of the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed.
And his output was just staggering. It wasn't only the 35 novels. He also wrote 15 collections of short stories, 14 folk stage plays, and 19 traditional ballads. I mean, he was a complete literary force, using every single form he could to tell the stories that needed to be told.
For all of this incredible work, he was given the title Sahitya Ratna, which literally translates to Jewel of Literature. Just pause and think about that journey for a second. From a boy denied an education because of who he was, to being celebrated as a jewel of his country's literature.
But here's the thing you have to understand about Bhau Sathe. For him, writing was never just an art form. It was a weapon. It was pure activism. His words were meant to shake the very foundations of an unjust society.
And he did not pull any punches. Picture this. It's August 16th, 1947, just 1 day after India celebrated its independence. What does Sathe do? He leads a march and declares, "This freedom is a lie. The people of this country are hungry." To him, political freedom meant absolutely nothing if the masses didn't have social and economic freedom.
He also became a central figure in another huge fight, the Samyukta Maharashtra movement. This was a massive campaign to create a state for Marathi-speaking people, with the powerhouse city of Mumbai as its capital. He used his incredible ballads and plays to get millions of workers fired up for the cause, because for them, it was a fight to make sure their labor and their language were at the heart of this new state's identity. His message was always simple, always direct. Mumbai belongs to the workers. He argued that the city was literally built on the sweat and the labor of its working class. And because of that, it rightfully belonged to them.
Now, a voice this powerful, this committed to the working class, it doesn't just stay in one place, it travels. And this is where we start to get the answer to our question about that statue in Moscow.
So in the 1950s, Sathe gets an invitation to travel to the Soviet Union. He became this kind of cultural ambassador, a living bridge between the working-class movements of India and the socialist world.
And in Russia, he made a huge impact. He told them the heroic story of the Maratha king Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj using his traditional ballads. His novels and stories got translated into Russian, Czech, German, all over. The Soviets really saw a kindred spirit in him. They even honored him as the Maxim Gorky of India, after their own great writer of the people. And that's why, decades later, his statue was put up in Moscow.
So what is the enduring legacy of this man? The man who held the world of the common person in his words. Well, you can pretty much sum it all up in one powerful, revolutionary idea.
At a Dalit literary conference in 1958, he delivered this iconic line. He was throwing out the old myths that were used to keep things the way they were. And instead, he declared that the world itself, everything, rests on the hands of the working class. That was the core of his philosophy. That was his gift to the world. And that really leaves us with one last big thought. The life of Bhau Sathe is so much more than just a history lesson. It poses this timeless, universal question. What happens when the people who have been silenced for centuries finally find their voice? The answer, as he showed us, is that they don't just tell their own story. They change the entire world.